Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a live from the south side of Evansville, Indiana, from the Carter Johnson Librarian Collection. We are in the Tony DeBlas magazine room. I am your host, the designated extrovert of the Carter Johnson Librarian Collection, Matthew Carey, and with me live tonight is the librarian, Mama Vi Johnson. We have a few new additions tonight in the Tony DeBlas room that I want to share.
My guess.
We'll see, a year or 6 months ago or so, I was here and we had picked up the judging vest, Tony's judging IML judge vest, jacket, and Andrew's Hellfire Inferno vest. And tonight we got to add Tony DeBlas's cover and his partner Andrew's cover to the Tony DeBlas magazine.
We also added 2 new certificates.
Yep, we have his honorary membership in GMSMA and his Leather Journal Business Person of the Year from 1990.
All of these artifacts were a gift from Tom Butts.
Tom Butts, who's our sponsor poster right here. So that's where we are tonight. It's Black History Month. And as you said earlier,
I'm Black.
So tonight we are going to be talking about Black History Month and specifically POC ancestors.
Shall we?
It's February. Let's do it.
Okay. I would like to begin all of this because most of you know that I'm an ex-history teacher. And I have a bone about segmenting history because Black history, Native history, all history is just history. Segmenting it makes it easy to other. As a result, I'm asking all of you to simply look at the history of this tribe as one, not Spanish history, Native history, Asian history as part of the tribe. This is our history. But when I was, once upon a time when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and I was a kinkler. There were nowhere near as many images that the few of us who were Black and kinky in the 70s could actually look at unless you really went hunting. As a result, a lot of this new generation doesn't realize how much people of color participation there actually was. So tonight I thought I would show you some images, tell you a few stories, and in this case, probably leave lots of time for questions. As a matter of fact, Matt, what do you think of reading some things in the chat and stopping as people post questions? Because for a lot of the images tonight, you are probably going to have questions.
Oh, absolutely.
So rather than leaving it, all of it till the end, let's take some of those questions and comments as we go.
Tonight, please, if you have a question that you don't feel comfortable just putting into general chat, please PM Shar for that. We're a little ways back from the laptop. Can everybody hear us okay tonight? We're on my laptop. I'm getting a thumbs up. Okay. So if you're not comfortable putting your question directly in, you want to DM it to somebody to have it read for you, please DM Shar HC and she will address that for you. Otherwise, feel free to ask questions and we will all try to keep up with them and we'll make this a very good. Do you want me to go ahead with the...
Let's start. 20 years ago, I met an amazing young photographer. He went by the name Dark Desad. And Dark complained about the images that he saw of beautiful Black women and gorgeous and handsome men in the tribe. Basically, there weren't any. So he turned his photographer's lens to creating the images that he wished that he saw. Dark put out 2 books, and I was privileged to do the introduction for one of them. As a matter of fact, let's go to that one, Matt. And I was reminded of a poem that they talk about for children. When a child learns X, or when a child grows with, for instance, when a child grows with love, the child learns to love. So this was part of that introduction, but basically I was talking about the images that were part of my kinkling years. Where were they? Did this mean we didn't matter? Because finding images of people in the scene who were black, brown, yellow, or red was very difficult unless you really went looking. That was also Dark's complaint. So for his generation, he created images that were award-winning in their beauty. And I want to show you a few before we back up about 100 years and start this conversation over.
You ready?
Yeah. Mistress Mir, as seen through the eyes of a talented photographer. Again, some of the more glamorous, beautiful imagery of women that Dark respected, and whether they were submissive, slave, dominant mistress. A beautiful black woman in this tribe was an image he wanted to show because it was an image he wished that he had seen.
Char, I can't see questions, so if anything pops up, please let us know.
Now, some of you may know this beautiful young lady. She goes by the name Liquid and is on Facebook. Again, beautiful images. Now, this is what your generation has. I think I want to back you up to about 1920 and start this conversation all over.
Good questions there. Anybody have anything on those? While I'm switching over.
I'm watching the chat. I don't see anything.
Okay.
Now, far too technical for me. Now, these were the kinds of images, if you were lucky enough to find them, that you might find in private collections. More often than not, this image was in reverse. It was usually the dominant white male or female over the black slave. But in private collections, when we were the exotic birds, so to speak, you might find images like this, or don't bust the body part here, or this. Now, this one is one of 3 postcards from the 20s that I was fortunate enough to pick up at auction. The woman riding the white male slave is very reminiscent of Josephine Baker.
Is that a white male slave?
Yes. No jest. Or very little. And the classic humiliation and heels and so on. Again, another very Baker-ish image. You can see what the other slaves are doing and the uncomfortable position they're in. And a very interesting table. Actually, the table looks like a pretty good idea that could be implemented today. But these images are actually very, very rare. Again, another postcard that I was fortunate enough to be able to pick up. And because of that, the library is fortunate enough to own the rights. Let's see what else we've got in this one.
Trail the dual femmes. See, that's the 2 femme assistants.
The assistant.
No, I can't read.
You can see the assistant.
I can translate about half of that.
Unfortunately, this is more like the image that you would have seen in the 20s. She is caricatured, badly caricatured. So this gives you a bit of a contrast to the other things that you just saw. So While there were very few images, they weren't the best. But now let's ease out of the 20s and probably slide into the 30s and 40s. Now you're looking at the work of Irwin Clark, the photography of John Willie, and the magazines that they were beginning to put out in the very early 40s. The classic man's girly mag. But at least we were there. Very much like society, we were in helping positions usually, but not always. Is a very interesting picture coming from a British magazine. The artist is a woman. Her name is Janine. Real name Rena Bull. But she was the only female artist for fetish or science fiction in the 40s and 50s. You could always tell her women because they were voluptuous, had very tiny feet, and definitely had a tush. But in this case, her heroine for this comic strip was Delia, and Delia was the dominant.
We have a question from Courtney. When these images were first produced, were they hard to find because they didn't exist or because they were kept so private due to the racism of the time?
They were kept very, very well. For one thing, there weren't that many of them. And those that were created were usually created in runs of maybe 100 for private collectors. Remembering that money is the root of all things, they were created for people who A, could afford them, and B, had exotic, or it would have been referred to as exotic tastes. Racism played into it, which happens with the image that you all are looking at now. Gene Bilbrew was a world-famous SM artist. He had a very distinctive style. And Leonard Bertman, who was one of the big publishers, published his magazine. His magazine was Exotique. Some of you have seen Zooms that I've done about it for the library's website, or have seen me do unboxings of them. But what very few people knew was that Gene Bilbrew, who also sketched under the name Enig, which is, of course, Gene backwards, was Black. I doubt sincerely that there are 10 photographs of Gene in history because his identity was kept a secret. Once or twice, he sketched himself into his own comics and parts of magazines like Down in the Corner and whatnot. And it was just another random sketch unless you knew who you were looking at. Gene did not have the best history, died in, I believe, the mid to late 70s in New York from combinations of drugs and alcohol. This was Gene's magazine. Exotique and Bizarre were the top fetish magazines of the 50s and 60s. Now, as pretty as these magazines are, would you believe they were categorized as fashion magazines? Delia, we looked at. Now, these were the beginnings of the images that Jill and I were given when we were kinklings in the 70s. They were mixed with lots of other things and other things that our mentors wanted us to learn. Those images, by the way, weren't limited to women. One of the top physique magazines for men, Physique Pictorial, which was probably the first positive series of images that a lot of young gay men saw of themselves, also sponsored I'm trying to think who Tony Curtis was in Physique when he did Ben-Hur. A lot of models modeled for Physique magazines, but a lot of the publishers snuck in images that were part kink and just signal enough to be gay. As a matter of fact, we have a complete run of Physique pictorial and of Exotique 1. But let's go to that next image and show you that those limited issues of Black men, women, and the few other people of color that could show up on a magazine cover weren't always women. Here is a beautiful young man portrayed in the classic Greek attire carrying a torch. Now, people, most of you have heard me talk about Jill's and my beginnings, and that we were fortunate that the first person who greeted us when we joined Eulenspiegel was a man named Jack Jackson. But very few people of color were active and out in what it is that we do. In New York, we called it the scene. One of the few professional dominants in a world where there were probably not more than 100 in the entire United States was Mistress Martha Gibbs. I wish I'd talked to her once, but I never got the privilege of meeting her. They tell me that she is retired and actually gone to Florida. But she was an active pro dom from about 1962 until she retired in the late 90s. Now, we modeled, and if you knew where, again, to find the images, you could find lovely Black women doing things that were kinky or fetish or perverted or all of these. Now, I'm not sure how many of the next generation would recognize the woman who is on this cover.
Wolf knows. Go ahead, Wolf.
What? Wolf is fanning herself over here.
Yes.
Why don't you unmute and tell me who we're looking at?
That is Lieutenant Uhura.
Correct. Real name? Nichelle Nichols.
Nichelle Nichols, yes.
Before she became an actress, she was a lingerie, foot, shoe, boot model. One of those things very few people actually know about.
The way we're so many orchestral strings.
What was that?
We've got chords or areas that are just thrown on a little bit as well.
Sorry, give me a mute, please. Go ahead.
Let's see what we've got coming up here next. Another image, tad bit more racy, but even she thinks it's fun because she's winking.
And these are before. Would these be before Star Trek?
Way before. This is probably 1962, 63.
So this would have been very underground because she probably would not have been on Star Trek if anybody had
Correct.
put those two things together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's hot.
I mean, the model is hot. The boots are just off the chain.
Two both together.
And when you put that all together, knowing who you're looking at, and a lot of my serious next gens know the name Uhura, but have no idea who Nichelle Nichols is. Evidently, there's something in the 70s and early 80s stuff that Matt's chomping at the bit here for.
Oh, it's just one of my favorites.
Now, in the mid 70s, I think the first album was 74, a group named the Ohio Players decided to scandalize a healthy portion of the music world with 3 albums, yes, Licorice Pizza album on the record player, album covers back to back. Now, if my memory serves me correctly, they were Ecstasy, Passion, and Pain.
Did you say Licorice Pizza?
Yeah.
That's so much better than vinyls.
Excuse me, it's a licorice pizza, youngin.
That's perfect. I love it.
Your generation called it vinyl.
No. It's called records are LP. Current generation called it vinyls. Let's not go there.
Kids. Now, most of the people that I knew never played the record and just bought them for their cover. This is one of 3 we have hanging here in the library.
So those are actually album covers.
Oh, yes, and the albums are
they're
still
open.
in them.
Cool. I did not realize those were gatefold album covers. Cool.
This is the second. Let me see if I have this one able to be opened. I'm not sure if I took a picture of it. And this is the third. Not only were they controversial and incredibly hot, I'm impressed. They were also really good music. But we were just beginning to see ourselves and play with images that began to merge past history into something that wasn't always ugly. Now, for those of you who have a knowledge of the history of Eulenspiegel, this is the man that I was talking about, was the first person that we met. His name was Jack Jackson, and Jack has recently been inducted into the Leather Hall of Fame. Jack was a good friend of the founder of Eulenspiegel, Pat Bond, and Jack was Eulenspiegel's only president. Running a little more secretive was the man who headed the Obia Society. The chief was the chief. The only Black slave who was allowed in that organization was me, because the Obia Society's motto was a white ass under a black hand. They were serious. That group could get pretty brutal. And a picture that still haunts me almost 45 years later, which I think is the next cover. That one. The photo in the upper right-hand corner, I had rescued that poor boy from a slave auction and kept him pretty close to me for the entire night because he had no idea what he had gotten himself into. But the organization also put out a magazine that was classic, for us, by us. I doubt that it had a subscription of more than 500, but at least we were beginning as a people to become more public in this magnificent thing that we do. Another face of my kinkling youth was CT, or Charles Thompson. Wonderful leatherman, usually could be found behind the bar of the Spike, welcomed women. Not that there were that many of us going into the Spike, but what most people didn't know about CT was he was also the Spike's owner.
Pictures of CT in the night shift collection.
Another one that was for us, by us, and if you wonder what young imsels look like, that's it. I took that picture of Jill in 1970.
5 years ago. 5 years ago now.
And the magazine itself had an interesting history. Another one with a very, very limited press run. Black Mistress Review was done in 5 runs of 100 each. Yes, we were beginning to come out, and yes, we were fetishized. The man who created that magazine had a thing for Black mistresses and served Jill for about 4 years. Hence, she ended up on the cover.
That lady on the cover, her name is Mistress Jill.
That
lady. Cool.
Now, the man who founded Black Mistress Review had a partner, and they eventually split. The other partner realized just how lucrative the pretty exotic bird could be and started his own magazine in 1979. And he called his Black Amazon Digest.
Okay. You've alluded to the exotic bird twice. Go ahead and explain the exotic bird.
Exotic bird syndrome. Think of a collector of almost anything who only wants that one thing that nobody else either has or can get. Someone who has a fetish for a particular person, not because of their character, but because of their color. And it is referred to as exotic bird syndrome.
And does that apply to kind of across the spectrum, people that any other things like that?
Of course, Mir, you met a few months ago. Interesting reaction.
She's a goddess. I don't know what you know. You were there. You got in trouble the first time you saw her.
Yeah, I did. That's all. You heard that story before. Another bio card that I created more years ago than I can remember for an event called Black Beat, trying to introduce them to some of their ancestors and to remind them that we are not new to this thing that we do. We've been here all along. You just never noticed.
I'm going to take a moment here to let everybody know that we are working on LOFA. It will likely be on the 4th Wednesday of the month. And Mistress Mir has already agreed to be a guest for one. So we will be getting Mistress Mir back.
Now, to qualify the term LOFA, it means Leather Old Farts Anonymous.
Dahok, no, Cecil would like to know, was Black Beat a magazine as well?
No, it was a wonderful program, but Black Beat magazine actually has something to do with the drumming industry.
There was oh gosh, what's the there's a magazine with Black in it. It's it's gotta be
You mean Black Leather and Color?
Blick.
We'll
Thank you.
that.
Okay.
We haven't gotten that quite that far into.
Yeah, I knew there was one. I knew there was one. I just
Especially mid-Atlantic folk. Remember Vern Stewart. Vern and Marcus Hernandez, another man of color, were actually columnists on both the East and the West Coast, and both extraordinary photographers. Vern helped a lot of title holders, mentored a lot of title holders, was considered the Wicked Witch of the East. That was his nickname. Marcus Hernandez was called the Wicked Witch of the West. And during the golden age of title holders, those were two men you did not piss off.
I think they were both at once.
Yes.
Hernandez was, yes. Yeah.
But now, again, we are seeing more and more of ourselves. Our young writers are beginning to come to the fore. Jackie Bishop, poetess. Kane Berlinger, extraordinary writer. And Kane has been awarded at least 4 or 5 Lambda Awards and other things for his writings. But Kane dared to make a Black sex action hero. It was unheard of before Kane wrote Hannibal Rex.
Okay.
Now, title holder circuit, many of you are familiar with. This is the first Black IML. 1984, his name was Ron Moore. And as a little bit of trivia, The year after Jill became IMSL in 96, a young woman ran by the name of Janelle Moore and ultimately became the next Black IMSL. But Janelle had a very unusual title that also ran with her because she was Ron Moore's sister. So they're the only sister and brother combination, IML IMSL, in history.
Very cool.
This woman is a legend. This is shortly after she became the first international Ms. Leather. This is Judy Tallwing McCarthy. 2/3 Apache, 1/3 Crow, I believe. And a woman of color. A more recent picture of Judy. Don't let that subdued grandmotherly native look fool you. That Spitfire is the reason for the passing of the Equal Rights Amendment and a number of other things that were done for women's history, as well as being as twisted as an old coat hanger.
There she is.
A young, sweet, innocent, probably at that point, 19 or 20-year-old
I think she was.
Young woman. I don't know if anybody here knows who they're looking at.
Yep. If you know, please unmute and put your guesses out.
Vanessa Williams.
That is indeed Vanessa Williams.
This is the photograph that dethroned a queen.
She was
the first Black Ms. America. And in her late teen years, she worked for a photographer, one of two women who worked as a photographer's assistant. He needed to shoot some fetish film and had to balance his camera, which is something that was done back in the day. You had to go to grayscale and then to color scale to make sure that your lights were proper. So she and the other assistant climbed into the regalia he was going to be photographing, and they went through a series of test shots. Normally, a photographer then throws their tests away because they're not important. They're just test shots to balance lights. Fade out. He didn't. When Vanessa Williams became Miss America, he first went to Hugh Hefner. And Hefner, he offered these photographs to Hefner for, I can't remember what price he was asking. And Hef said, no, I'm not going to buy them. I'm not going to publish them. I am not going to ruin the first Ms. Black America. So after being turned down by Hef, he went to the Gucciones, who ran Penthouse. And of course, they bought it. Not only did they buy the photographs, this became not a centerfold in the Penthouse issue, but a full-sized 2-by-3 foot poster.
That's what this is.
Yes, that is the actual
poster. You can see the pole.
We have it in the art.
Is that leather? Is there some way I can bend that to? No. Okay.
He worries me.
You ready?
Yeah.
Black
now,
Cat.
moving into farther into the contest circuit, Black Cat was the American Leatherman.
And lit me up, Crossfire world. And I love him for it. That was the best question I got. Oh, that's it. We won't discuss the question.
Now, sliding into the magazines of the 90s, it became time for a magazine for us, by us. Michelle Buchanan, who actually wrote under the name Mistress Antoinette, Darryl Perry, Lydell Jackson, and good Lord, I just forgot the name of the fourth founder, decided that they were going to put out a magazine because there were more and more Black title holders. There were more clubs springing up, the Panthers and the Jacks of Color in New York, and the other organizations that were beginning to come around. And the news of what those title holders were doing, what our writers were writing, and so on, didn't usually appear in the Leather Journal or in San Watopia Guardian. So they created a magazine we affectionately call Blick. What it stands for is Black Leather in Color. And Black Leather in Color was also inaugurated into the Leather Hall of Fame just a few years ago. As a matter of fact, these are pictures from the inaugural issue party. We finally got it done and rolling. I'm proud to say I wrote for Black Leather in Color. Now, another first, and that is the second copy that we are privileged to have. Ken Berlinger decided that he was actually going to do a study of Black men in leather, a series of questions, of observations, of asking them about their lives. He put it all together into one book that was groundbreaking. He called it Black Men in Color. It has since been reprinted, updated slightly, reprinted, and the reprint is now available on Amazon. Many of you know Graylin Thornton. Graylin is actually, technically, is still the only Black drummer. Drummer, of course, at the time was an international title. Drummer magazine went all over the world, and Mr. Drummers from various countries came in all to compete. It could be said that drummers were the bad boys of the gay men's leather world. And other than Ron Moore for IML, there had not, up until this time, been a Black international Mr. Drummer. That picture of Graylin made history all over Black communities of leather in North America, United States, and Canada. And we were all so proud, we didn't know what to do with ourselves.
Important note there. Wayward Soul says, for those that don't know him, he's also on Guard Cigarette Salon on YouTube.
True.
Okay.
True.
Thank you, Wayward.
And this is a Ray Castro sketch. Ray, he no longer sketches for the tribe. Ray used to give title holders the gift of a portrait. But before he did the oil portrait, he did a sketch. When Jill became IMSL, Ray did her portrait, and this is the sketch that he did. You can go past that one.
Why would I go past that?
Because it's boring. You can go past that one. You know those people.
Yeah, I do.
The cute one on the left, though.
Can you at least talk about the cute one on the left?
That's the husband. Jill was the first Black IMSL. Jill was the creator of the Ms. World contest. She is the Carter in Carter Johnson. And during this past period of COVID, she is responsible for Leather Jeopardy and a number of other programs that were conversations with women, conversations. One of them, which is now up for a small community award, is women talking about menopause.
We're gonna have to get Miss Carter on.
She is a loafer,
We're
so
gonna have to get her on.
that's the cute one. And previously,
Wait.
you heard me talking about Janelle Moore. This is Ron Moore's sister.
Ron Moore's sister's kind of hot.
What do you have there, Shar? Is there a question?
No, I think we should talk about the other person in that last picture.
Why?
because that other person in the last picture has done some amazing fucking things for this entire community.
You mean the
Much
Johnson
less
and the Carter
Vaughn.
Johnson?
Yes,
No,
sir.
God.
I thought that was me.
No,
That,
you're
am-
the God.
that amazing woman has written 2 books that I know of, has started the only collection that I know of that takes our history and takes it out to the world and makes sure people can see their history. They can put the books in their hand. There's nothing like holding an 1800s copy of any book, okay, of your history. Okay? So I don't care what the crazy old lady next to Carrie says. That woman, fucking awesome.
And she writes really bad poetry.
It's not bad poetry. I've read it.
Can't be worse than the Vogons.
It's about a lot of coffee, and there are a few other things that slip in there. Janelle. Well, facing me, since I guess, yeah. Okay, on the left is Stacey Thomas. Stacey was the first and only Black Ms. MLA. And she was 95, 96. By the way, the pin sash is what it looked like 30 years ago.
That's the pin sash?
That's the bouncing baby.
In 96?
Yeah, that was the second one.
That looks a little more manageable.
It was.
Didn't weigh
It
60
was also
pounds.
a lot lighter.
Yeah, not 60 pounds.
Stacey is now very active with the United Nations Children's Fund. So she has taken all of those leather skills and she's lobbying for our youth. The story of Onyx, most of you know. Our men got together and decided they were going to form an organization that would not just foster brotherhood, but also activity, community involvement, and education. The Men of Onyx. Now, these are 2 little beautiful pieces that we are privileged to have in the library. The artist is named Coco. And Coco was discovered by Bondage Life magazine in the very early 80s. Coco was unusual because of the look of his art, but he was even more unusual because the only thing that he drew was Black women. As a result, Coco's art were the first images of bound Black women in Bondage Life, which at the time was the #1 bondage magazine in North America. Moving into the next decade.
Any questions? Jack LaLanne was in Physique Pictorial too.
Yes. Yes, he
The
was.
boots are fire. Fire. Got it. Let's see who that was.
Mr. Butt snuck in on us.
Good
Greetings, Tom.
evening, Tom.
But now moving more into some of today's images. Not all heroes and heroines exist in the past. And I'm really quite pleased to show you some faces of the people that I consider my next gens. So let's just look at some handsome and beautiful folk who are the movers and shakers who are going to carry this tribe forward. Many of these images you know.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She's also a pro. the first ever Ms. Bear.
Cute. Okay, yeah.
Very young.
That looks like Boy Robbie.
Very young.
International Master Slave 18
Blue and froze.
with the banner. That's here. Some of his newer work.
Yes. Magazine, Jackie Griot, Perverts of Color.
Something's leather purse.
Jackie Thompson.
That's your
A
Tulsa
much
vest?
younger Jose.
Is that your Tulsa vest?
Yes. You like my book stand?
I like your book stand. You seem to like your book stand.
They were just holding the book that I needed to read.
Sure, this one's going to make it onto YouTube.
Oh, I'll put it up. I just can't promise it'll stay.
We may have to censor. I didn't preview everything that you had here.
Well, every once in a while, you might have to, put a little dot up or something.
A little blur.
Little blur.
Little blur.
Last but not least, did you bring the file of some of Dark's images? I can't remember if there's one more file on here.
I don't know, but Traveler got my Vogons joke. Thank you, Traveler. Yes.
And I had been talking previously about some of the work of Dark Desaad. I just thought I would show you some beautiful images to close this out with so that we can open up for conversation. So, would you consider it educational or eye candy or a little bit of both?
At the moment, it's eye candy.
You can keep scrolling,
We can just stay right here.
When you start with that picture, there is no education happening. I know for a fact that everybody's brain shuts off.
Oh,
well,
you
my
should
brain
see
doesn't
what
shut
else
off.
got put in there.
Brain doesn't shut off.
It goes into
Okay.
hyper.
Well, all the blood runs away from it. How's that?
I'm going to tell a story
Might
really
be
quick of me calling Mir for the first time and her answering the phone and me nearly just melting into a puddle on my chair I stuttered, and Char looked at me and was like, "Yeah, me too." Not just you. We went through a few of these earlier, but we stopped.
But I figured, you know,
go through
let's close this out with a little bit of eye candy.
And if anybody has any conversation, go ahead and unmute and join in here while we flip through these. I like the black and white with just the.
I'm going to post the YouTube link if you'd like to talk about that.
Dark's eye for photography was just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And he created what he wanted to see.
Yeah. And isn't that kind of a motto we've always had in the community? If you don't see what you want in the community,
make it.
Make it. So anybody out there, you don't see what you want in the community.
Now, there is a very interesting story about Dark's photography and the Neela art show that Scott may be able to share. I've only ever heard that story from One Direction.
I know about that story. I was there.
The art show?
Hello, boss. Yes.
So the art show, that was it at the Fetish Flea in Danvers?
That one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
With the electrical tape.
Yes, and that's what happened. So just to kind of give you a quick 411 on what happened. This was a new hotel that we were in. They were interested in having us. We did not know that you couldn't sell adult products or adult things in Danvers. The hotel where the majority of the vending was taking place was in the ballroom. Lucky for us, the ballroom was actually in Middleborough, the next town over, that didn't have these rules. But where we were having the art show and where people were vending out of rooms was in Danvers. And the hotel management were afraid of what would happen with the town, that they ran around and put little dark bars all over the naughty bits. Vivian Kramer was beside herself.
Dark was
ballistic.
Yes.
He went ballistic, and it took us an hour to talk him down.
Yes. There was a part of me, I could show you part of the drawing that I have. I used to work as a life model from the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And for those of you, if you also want to know about Black erotica, Sargent painted one of the bellhops from the Copley Plaza. And basically the pose that he is in is the same pose that I am in a drawing that's actually in my dining room. But this particular painting is also at the MFA, and the drawing that I have was actually done in the MFA as well. So a big naked picture of me that is life-size in my dining room was done feet away from this particular painting. I could probably get both of them up if you want me to share the screen.
Yeah, let me flip through these and we'll.
Yeah, flip through. I'll get both drawings up just so that you can see.
Good night, Trey. Have a good night.
I'd like to know what's going to happen to that drawing at some much, much, much later date.
We've just gone through the series.
Yeah, it turns back around. No, we didn't have that one in the first one. No.
I need to know where to steal it from.
No, when I get to the end, it kicks off and gives me that error. So, what's that, Char?
I was whispering sweet nothing in Scott's ear.
Okay.
Hey, Mom, I heard you talking about onyx. Did you touch on the pearls as well?
No.
Actually, no, I did not. Oh,
should have brought
them on me. As onyx was forming, there was a lot of question. There was a lot of gossip, not all of it good. And Jill and I had privilege. Jill was still IMSL, and I had just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. So in order to basically protect our brothers, we let the world know if anybody had a problem with the men of Onyx, let them come and find us, which pretty much shut down a lot of the rumor, the innuendo, and the nasty. As the club was forming, a few other of our sisters ended up doing the same thing for the men as one or two other chapters of Onyx were being formed, one in Atlanta and another in Detroit. There were 8 of us all told who were basically big sisters, mothers, and shields for the boys in their first 5 years. They called us their jewels. But about the same time, a beautiful song came out called Black Pearl. And we became their pearls. Now, Lady D, who is Petra in the Onyx Pearls, wanted to see if she could bring the sisterhood that the 8 of us had, because we all knew and adored each other, to a greater group of women. And she started basically a small sorority of Black women in Atlanta to extend the idea of the 8 of us, and started the first Pearls chapter. Now there are Pearls chapters all over North America, and one is trying to open in Canada.
Yes, folks that snuck in. We've got Traveler, Akasha, Venny, Peg, welcome back, Peg, Bebe, NCSF, Ari, House of Cruel Intentions, Jake, I think that's Jake from North Carolina, good to see you, Lace, and Pulse, which we heard from, snuck in.
So I'm ready when you are.
You go right ahead.
Okay. So I wanted to bring this painting into it because, again, this drawing into it because, again, this was done at the MFA. And so this right here, that's Thomas E. Kelleher. And that's at the MFA. He was a bellhop at the Park Plaza. And Sargent was doing a mural at the Boston Public Library. And a lot of the drawings, the drawings for that, for the murals at the MFA and for the Boston Public Library, a lot of the paintings and drawings were based upon him. He basically had used him and a lot of them, even for the basis for a lot of the women in the paintings, he stood for when Sargent was doing that. This is the drawing that I wanted to bring, just to see them put a black line over my considering that this was created in the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston.
I'm censoring you.
Yeah.
I'm not.
So, welcome to little bits and pieces of my equally perverted past. And some pictures, illustrations, lovelies, things for thought, and maybe an occasional masturbatory image that you might not normally see. So have we shocked everybody into absolute submission?
No, I'm sure there's lots of questions and comments and thoughts. So feel free to unmute, try to one at a time. Anybody got any thoughts? Comments?
I'm gonna have to find out where I can find more pictures of Nichelle Nichols.
I'm gonna.
My master will die to see those.
Oh my God.
Suggest the library.
I'm going to spend the next 45 minutes trying to come up with why the Vanessa Williams poster is leather or colors of leather or
I mean, I
some.
saw the harness. It tracks, Matt. We can put that in the
Darcy, can
library.
y'all help me out with why that poster should be at the leather annex? Was she from Tennessee?
You want Sean to clean it? What?
Wait a minute.
No,
if we're going to start trying to get a hold of it, the baby needs more stuff.
It needs cared for.
See,
No, see, you don't have to worry about that. We've got it taken care of for you, Matt. Don't worry, it's already here.
Oh, is it?
Vi, have you by chance had that scanned yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scanned.
That'll
So
work.
guys, print it out.
I'll take a digital one. I'll be all right. Okay.
I can get them printed for you.
Amazing the things you find hanging around in the library.
Yeah, like this.
Yes, please.
I had this earlier and I was like,
It's got to go back in the binder.
gotta do. I did find something interesting while I was looking around here for magazines earlier. Here's a bit of obscure leather history for anybody that's not familiar. Some random leather dude tried to do a magazine back in 2004.
Mine's signed.
And there's one.
Don't you still owe me some magazines?
I owe a lot of people. I owe a lot of people some magazines.
Mama Vi, I
Got that
just wanted to
crossfire,
say
too. Right.
hello. I'm one of the young ladies that had the absolute pleasure of bringing Dark's vision to light.
Is that Ty I'm hearing?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Hey, baby.
Hi. I just wanted to say hello and thank you so much for keeping his work alive and allowing others to see his vision. And, you know, I can speak for him, and I know how thrilled and how much he loved and adored you. And we absolutely love the fact that you know, jumped in and helped, and I love you and thank you.
Have you seen the exhibit that Dima made for Dark in Second Life?
No.
We have, of course, a presence in Second Life. We have our own island and library called the Athenaeum.
Okay.
On the island, there are a number of buildings. One of them is a gallery just for Dark's work.
Okay.
So he is there. We take an exhibit of him when we travel that we have called Out of the Dark-ness. Okay. And we show 10 or 15 of his matted works, along with a portrait of him and a small biography, so that his work is being shown to a brand new generation who had never seen it before.
Yeah. And it's, I'll have to dust off my Second Life login and hop on and see it.
Go to the Athenaeum, wander around the island. Dima has lost her mind. It is so beautiful. It has won awards.
It is very beautiful.
And
do we have a link for the Athenaeum? I don't have one to share.
We did.
I had the we had the videos.
We have the videos.
Last time. I don't have them with me.
It is, as a matter of fact, Dima just posted on Facebook a few days ago that we're heading, it's been 4.5 years since the anniversary, and it will be celebrating its 5th anniversary in July. So I know at least one picture with all of the links is on at least my Facebook page, but the Athenaeum has tags that run through the library's group as well.
I don't have the links on the because I'm on the laptop. Char, if you could Google it, if someone would type the proper, I can't. I'm not going to be able to spell it right now. Athenaeum, AETH.
Sai just posted it.
Thank you.
Sai just posted it on chat.
Oh, I gotta scroll down. I gotta scroll. Some quick housekeeping here. Traveler, yes, you need to read the 4th and 5th books of the increasingly inaccurately named Hitchhiker's Trilogy. And if you check my profile on FET, I am RSVP'd to the event at the restaurant at the end of the universe. So yes, I am familiar with that. Peg, I did see you sneak in. I mentioned it earlier. Good to see you. We've got a couple other folks that have snuck in. Zhaoui snuck in.
Cool.
Look at that handsome devil. Mr. Tom Butts is here.
Mr. Butts, always a pleasure.
Daddy Sparky snuck in on us. I think that's got everybody. I do have a request. We are at 34. This may be one of our highest attended Librarian Speaks. Thank you all very much.
Should we tell Tom what we're talking about?
We can tell Tom. Let me, Shar, if you will post the link to the walkthrough video one more time. I have a special request. If everyone would please click the link through to the walkthrough video. Subscribe to the channel just to support us and help us build it. I think we're at 199 subscribers. We'd like to try to build the channel out a little bit. There's tons of videos of Mom doing unboxings, us doing the walkthrough video, and previews of various rooms in the library. I know we've got this room up on the Thank You to Tom Butts video, which is the Tony DeBlas magazine room. We've done the rare book room, and then the walkthrough of the whole thing so far.
Yeah.
Those are there, in addition to probably hundreds of videos of you unboxing or just a story you wanted to tell.
Once you told me about Zoom, it was game on.
There is all kinds of mama stories.
My favorite so far has been the chats with a certain lovely woman whose name now is left my brain. It just went away.
Assuming she's talking about the eternally brilliant Gloria Brand. But
yes, thank you.
Yep.
I can't believe I lost that name.
Gloria's one of the first ones I'm trying to line up for LOFA. So if you all would do that for us, it would be a huge support. Tell your friends about the YouTube page. We don't try to push a whole lot, but we would really love the support there. Help us get it moving towards maybe monetization and a little more running in here.
Now, I admit one of the reasons for me having an awful lot of fun with the Zooms is the ability to share with you the things that come in and the people who send them. But I have a hidden agenda. I want to start talking about the people and the businesses that support us.
Yep.
So every time I do a Zoom from now on, there's going to be a little tag at the end about someone or something so that we can begin to support the people, the places, the businesses that support us. So as many times as I've talked about Tom's generosity in all of the things that are in this room and the books, the magazines, I believe in realtors that are for us and by us, which is why there is always a sign in the back that talks about the fact that Tom is also a realtor for this tribe. I want to start talking about those businesses and those people who are always there, who are often the unsung heroes. And it's time to sing some praises. So when I start doing the next unboxings, somebody is going to get a shout out, and I'm just going to keep rocking with it.
Speaking of Tom, generosity and what's new in the library.
The newest additions to the room. Tom, I finally got the hat stands that I needed in order to be able to show more of those generous gifts.
Nice.
Shar, put us back so we're big, please. Sorry, Tom. Hi.
You can see the stands so that they are next to the vest, the overlay, I should say, and the jacket.
Tell me what we've got here, Mama.
You have Tony and Andrew's covers.
Who's this?
So, back on the stand so we can see them.
I brought them up close so they can see them up close.
Tony's and Andrew's.
Tell us about the bat.
Okay.
Let me share my 50-50 feelings last night. I had some 50-50 emotional feelings last night. You know that mixed emotions thing? So I come in, and these are in the workroom. And Mama says, Tony has she holds the bat pin up. Because if anybody knows anything about Tony,
well, actually,
tell them.
The new generation probably wouldn't. Most of you know Dr. Anthony Frank DeBlas as the creator of the leather pride flag. There is a lot more to that man that not a lot of people either know or remember. PhD in mammology, master chef. But he wrote a lot of kink under the name Richard Crusher. You can take that for what it's worth. Or Der Fledermaus, because his specialty, his PhD, is in bats. And Der Fledermaus was his favorite bat. I'm sorry, was the name of bats. His favorite was the Desmodus, forgive me. And when he created his publishing company, which published Drummer, Monk, ultimately Samotopia Guardian, Tough Customer, and a few others, he named it Desmodus after his favorite bat.
So these were in the workroom, and Mama has the pin. This one had an eagle on it. Not the same, but similar to.
From a distance, you wouldn't notice.
And you were telling me that Tony had the pin and wanted to replace the eagle on the cover. So she asked me to swap the pins out on Tony's cover. And I told her, I need you to understand that I am 50% against this.
The other 50% did what I asked him to.
And the other 50% was for it, because 50% of me thought this is the way that it was. And then you said, well, this is the way he wanted it. And the other 50% wanted to do it the way Tony wanted it done. But I had mixed emotions last night.
There were bats on everything. One very generous patron by the name of Tom Butts has sent us the man. The things that we have of Tony's in this collection and of Andrew's are the things that are personal and the things that mean the most. His jacket, his handwritten notes, even his dagger, which sits on my desk, which has a bat handle, pill case, photographs, and the things that tell you more about the man than just the fact that he was a Leatherman. He was also an amazing human being. And so I get to show the world that in the awards, in the overlays, in the covers, in the cookbooks, in the greeting cards, because he collected them. And all of the things that speak to the human being, not just the Leatherman. And more than anything, that means the world to me. Those few of you who remember me from 30 years ago know that Dr. Frank DeBlas was one of the few men that I ever called daddy. And on the board of directors for the Leather Archives Museum, I was daddy's golden retriever. And that's a whole different story.
Tony was also a founder.
Yes.
Of the Leather Archives Museum.
So anywho, do we have questions? Are we time for open dialogue? Is it time to get
I've given them
to the images that we showed them? What?
I've given them an opportunity to unmute and politely don't talk over each other, but have at it, folks.
Traveler would like to know if anyone is coming to, I believe that's South Plains Leather Fest.
South Plains Leather Fest. Bebe says Invictus and they will be there. Cecil will be there. Peg will be there. Baby said she's been subscribed since you read chapters that correspond to a story you were telling from To Love to Obey to Serve. Peg subscribed. Master Cecil says the count was 39 earlier, he believes. So great attendance tonight. Is it because we were live and I drive up here every month?
Okay. Great Char, we would.
Sure, put the donation link in and we'll
Great Char, we would.
D House of Kush says they'll be at South Plains and we'll be bringing their book. Akasha says they'll be there. Lace is going to be there. We've got a lot of folks going to South Plains Leatherfest in here tonight.
So if you're looking for me, find the little yellow thing that's scooting all over the hotel. My ass would probably be on it.
Probably won't have time to hang the flag on it yet. I've told Mama we need to put. She's got the gosh, what's the name of that?
A linker.
And a linker. And I told her we should put the little dunes if you're at the sand dunes or in a maze in a maze. You get the flag that you have. We'll put a flag up with her with the Carter Johnson logo flag, and you'll always be able to spot Mama at the events by the flag on her. A linker.
So you will be.
I can print those. We could do those with all the logos, and you could switch them out.
We got to figure out a way to put a flag on.
You will be looking for me on a little yellow thing that looks like a tricycle that's still making up its mind.
Follow closely by that little rat.
Else you have a bad attitude about my pet puppy. You didn't see my pup. I haven't had her running all over the floor.
Pulse, I will have you know.
Yeah.
My master spent 30 minutes training that pup for her.
And I'm gonna spend 30 seconds having an accident.
Leave Luna alone.
Luna can board at my house while
helping it have an accident. But that's a whole.
Still have library pins?
Yes, we have some.
Traveler would like to know if you still have enamel pins, so maybe you should pack some of those to South
Plains.
Plains.
Bring a few with me, yeah.
To South Plains. We have two. I don't have my vestas.
The Crossroads Annex will be at South Plains with a small display. And we will actually have all three of our librarians there in the same place, in the same time, which will actually be a first since we formatted as an annex.
Fantastic. Congratulations. There is a question here about getting a book signed.
Find me?
Somebody has, if somebody's ordered one and happens to run into you somewhere, would that be acceptable?
Now that I have wheels, so to speak, getting around is actually going to be an awful lot easier.
Fantastic. Scott, would you mind to show us?
Traveler's going to be at SPLF online this year. So could we set up a talk so that he could talk to you and get a pen?
Yeah. Easy stuff. If you don't find me in the library, look for the little yellow thing running all over the hallway.
Well, there are two. Do you still have both? You have the limited editions and
I want to say probably. I am not going to stake my life on that.
Okay. There are two pens. Shark, could you maybe, or Scott's got it.
One is a bit more glittery. That's the old one.
That's the older ones.
And, of the new one, it's a bit more glittery than the other.
Yeah. Well, the limited editions had the glitter in the heart.
That's the one that I have. That's the one that I got at World.
Yeah. There's when they revised the logo when you added the collection, and the logo is updated, and there were new pens. Char, would you can you pull one and hold it up to the camera, maybe? Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
Yeah, that one's a collector's item, actually.
I hit the wrong button. Please undo whatever I just did. I think I turned off your camera by mistake.
What did you do?
I was trying to hit the remove spotlight, and I think I hit turn off his camera. No, I bumped his camera. I'm terribly sorry. It won't let me turn it back on.
Scott can.
Imagine that. I can't turn somebody's camera on from here.
Scott can.
Peg's wanting the library pen. We may need to figure out some way to
I'll bring some with me.
To do the pins to folks that aren't going to be at South Plains.
True.
We'll see if we can figure that out, folks. It's been a minute since we had those done, and they haven't been on the mind. Does anybody else have anything? Come on, there was tons of stuff tonight.
Well, when I saw the picture of Vanessa Williams, the first thing that came to my mind was all of the political shit that she had to go through. Like, I mean,
Yes.
that's and she wasn't the only one who put herself out there, but like she was really slammed.
Yeah.
So that's what I thought of.
That was 80s, right?
80s,
Like
very
87.
early. No, it was early. She was a kid.
I remember it, but I
want to say like 83 or 4.
I was a teenager, barely a teenager, but I remember the hoopla.
She was a scapegoat, and she was an easy target.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, and like you're saying, if Hess wanted to actually protect her, wouldn't buying them and then not publishing them have been like if he could?
Not necessarily, because buying the photographs is one thing, buying the rights is another. The photographer could have sold them over.
Right.
But he could have had the stipulation, if I buy them, I'm buying them outright, and not even say that he didn't have any intention of publishing. I'm going to sign off and sign back on because apparently you can't get my video going. So
hang on, let me see if I can. I'm so
sorry. I heard Scott.
Okay, start my video. Here we are.
Back again. I'm so sorry.
You're welcome.
There was too many options, and I'm a long way from the screen there. Yeah, Peg, if you folks will want us to get your book signed, politely and calmly find and ask Mama to,
or offer to give me a push around on my linker.
Traveler says that caricature image really made me cringe. Me too.
Yeah.
It was very cool to see the images 20 to 50s besides that one.
I will set up something through Suck the Rainbow
for pins,
so that you could do a few pins that way, and that'll give you addresses to mail to, if that will help. Okay, I'll get that taken care of. It'll be ready for next month, everybody. So just show up next month. You'll be able to order a pin.
Is the library going to be at CLF this year in any capacity?
Colorado Leatherfest? You're in Colorado.
The producer of Colorado Leatherfest, not this year. Next year's our 10-year anniversary, and we're going to see if we can't get the mothership to come out and visit us for that one.
I'll come to Colorado next year. Shall we?
I'll take you all. I'd love it.
I can't read that far.
Hang on.
There, I can see.
Thank you, Cecil. I saw your note. I will keep that in mind. Come on, folks.
It's good to be able
to join in. Please participate.
Hey, you can hang my pants from the
okay, well, I had another thought.
My library pants, you can hang them from the flagpole. They'll see you then.
With you in them? Or?
Yes. Let's go pulse in them first.
I think I might like to see that.
He looks really good in them.
He kind of does, yeah.
There were women threatening to rip them off of me while I had them on the last.
No. Be kind to the pants.
Could have been kind of interesting. That's all.
Sounds like a fundraiser to me.
So I was just thinking we can bid it. Let's raffle it off. A chance to rip the pants off Paul.
No, we're just going to put it on the flagpole and let her ride around with my pants hanging in the breeze.
With pulse in them. Somebody started to say something there.
Yeah, I had another thought, but it kind of my ADHD. So I was thinking about the drummer picture, and then I started thinking about women of drummer and how did that come to be?
Drummer has gone through a lot of incarnations. It was originally owned by good Lord, Robert Embry back in the 70s when Drummer was actually a newspaper. Ultimately, he and a few other leathermen from Los Angeles turned it into a magazine, which Tony and Andrew bought and took it from a little something that was regional to an international magazine. Ultimately, the magazine was sold to a company in Holland. And for a lot of reasons, some of which are not the nicest, ultimately it went defunct. Now, since International Mr. Drummer was the poster boy for Drummer magazine, when the magazine went down, so did the title. Ultimately, it went from Holland to somehow being picked up by a man in Pittsburgh named Mike Zool, who, after any one of a number of business dealings that I'm still not entirely sure of, went from drummer to leather sir, leather boy. Ultimately, that got sold. Are you following the bouncing ball here? And about 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, he decided to bring the contest back as Drummer North America. I believe there were 3 Drummer North America, but in the process, a lot more women were coming out. Tony Cellini was a mentee, perhaps, of Mike, and realized that the drummer philosophy, Thoreau's statement of marching to the beat of a different drummer, didn't pertain just to men. That women in this community also marched to a different beat. And wouldn't it be wonderful if the idea of that very different woman who was wild and crazy and doing what she chose to do, that spirit could be brought forward? So after beaucoup conversations, Mike gave Tony the go-ahead, and the Women of Drummer movement has been running ever since.
Yes, it has.
Yes, it has. It's wonderful. They have that love challenge going on now, and I'm doing the love challenge.
So am I.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you.
I'm gonna not stop your video. Wait, the right one this time. There we go. Anybody else? Lots of good stuff. I know somebody wants to say something about me here. Come on.
Those photos were
see me in colors?
Those photos were really gorgeous. They were fantastic. And they reminded me of the documentary that we were just, because I mean, as my grandma, you are aware that I'm pledging. So the documentary that we had to watch a little bit ago. So yeah. I mean, yeah, she's beautiful. I mean, she's beautiful. So yeah, just anywhere I see her, it's just like a magnetism, just like a really raw magnetism. And this kind of like Afrofuturism that you don't really get to see too often when you're looking at like Black photographic expression. So it's fantastic.
And Mir's so expressive in the face too. You see the images and you get the thoughts there.
So many of Dark's models, as we bring his work back to the public, the women that he photographed in and of themselves were powerhouses. And all of that shows in his photos. And we were given the gift of all of those photographs. So as we slowly but surely make Dark's exhibit bigger and bigger and work toward one day having a 3rd book, because he published 2, that would show all of the incredible women he photographed. That's pretty much a goal, to not only show the beauty, but also to inspire the next generation of young, gifted Black photographers.
Thank you, Kasha.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you because it really filled my cup. Really filled my cup. Thank you so much.
Grandmother's prerogative.
I'd like to know a little bit about how the cultural differences between societies and in this particular case between races, would have kept those of color, Hispanics, Indians, Blacks, Native Americans, that all of them. How do those cultures come into play when it comes to the kink?
I do not have the right to speak for a culture other than my own. Would that there were more people on this particular Zoom who could. I can tell you, because of damn near 50 years experience, when I first came out, it was, how could you do that? What's the matter with you? Or that's something only white people do. Or why would you do something that freaky? There was a whole lot of questions. Most of them were not nice. Other Blacks, actually. I remember doing a radio show in, I think it was 82. New York local radio show. I can't even remember the host now. A 2-hour show that I did with my mistress. And the first hour was fine. We took a break. And when we came back in from the break, he said something about these two beautiful women walking back in, one white, one black, and all hell broke loose. Ultimately, the switchboard blew up and shut down. The comments were not polite. How could you? How dare you? What's wrong with you? Don't you have more pride than that? And all the way to, why would you expose that? If we do it, we only do it on the down low. That is not something you talk about in polite company. That's not something you talk about at all, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of other experiences beside mine that are all very, very similar. Kink was not something that was discussed. Within the Black community, you might have gotten wild and funky, but you ended up back either in the missionary position or giving a blowjob, because nothing else was seemly, and or at least nothing that should be talked about. Were people getting their freak on? Yeah. They admitting to it? No. I was out in public and never really thought about it, because the only person whose opinion I valued was my mother's, and my mother knew everything. After that, kiss my ass and buy a bond for Israel. Now it's, of course, kiss my ass and buy a bond for the library. But when went through those, my kinkling years, I wasn't thinking about color, because as an Eulenspiegel family, there are only about 25 or 30 of us. We were a very close group. As I began to explore the larger world of kink, going to club runs, and then ultimately to events, I began to realize there were a whole lot of people in a room, and me. As a matter of fact, that awareness became awkwardly painful out of living in leather. There were about 400 people at the conference, and me. And although I knew damn near everybody there, and we were an extended family, still felt kind of alone. Fade out. Must have been about 6 years ago at MSC. The hotel was laid out so that the balcony overlooked the main area before you went into the ballroom. And of course, the big patch flag was there. There were leather pride flag there, and everyone was dressed in their finest, getting ready to go into the evening ceremonies. I was standing on the balcony looking down, And I realized I was crying. And one of my other sons, Mason, came up and said, "Mom, are you all right?" There were tears of joy, but there were also tears of relief and release. I was looking down at about 80 people, and more were coming all the time as we were getting ready, taking pictures, greeting everybody, having like cocktails and getting ready to go into the banquet. And I was looking down at more people of color in one place than I had seen in my first 20 years. And in that moment, passed off a torch that I didn't have to carry anymore. I didn't have to be the torchbearer. I didn't have to be the front runner. I didn't have to be the icebreaker. I wasn't alone anymore. Before that, 3 wonderful women, one of whom is now deceased, had decided to have an event for us, by us, and they called it Black Beat. And there were things about that event that were just culturally different. There was food. We socialized over food. As kinky as we were, and as much play was going on, and as many workshops were going on, we got together for meals, and those meals were sponsored by the event. One of the first meals, the food had been served, and nobody was touching their food. Everybody was looking at everybody else, waiting for someone to say grace. And finally, one of the ministers in the group sort of figured out, what was going on. We are culturally waiting for that signal that we all grew up with. You don't touch that plate until grace is said. And someone said grace, and all of a sudden the silence was broken. We were all talking again. We were all eating, laughing, and so on. We got together Sunday morning for final breakfast, and we were all seated at our tables, and the food was being served. And we ended up having a very small church meeting because somebody started to sing "Lift Every Voice and Sing." And that led from there to a few more hymns and a blessing over breakfast. Those things are cultural.
And a whole lot of tears.
I didn't hear you.
And a whole lot of tears.
Yes, Pulse, there were. And there was something, regardless of the fact that we were there for education, we were there to play, we were there at a great family reunion. There was something culturally bonding in those moments that didn't happen at other conferences. Those allies who were there with us, and there were many, just sort of fell into the love circle that was going on. Asked a few questions, learned a lot. But being at Black Beat was somehow different than being at Black Rose, and God knows I had been to many, or Tess, and I had been to many, or American Brotherhood, or the hundreds of other events that I had been to. There was something different, and it was bringing in the culture to the kink. That I can speak to.
May I jump in behind you?
Of course.
Please do.
I belonged to at that time, one of the mistresses that started Black Beat. I belonged to her then. Lady Z and I were doing the scouting for the first hotel and all of that. Black Beat was designed because we had all experienced that cultural disconnect of going to other events. Not that we were trying to be separate, but when you go to places, and I'm speaking personally here, because they would look at me and they were used to Black dominance. A Black dominant was fine, and when he had 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever female slaves behind him, and then they would look at me and go, "Well, what's wrong with sir?" And I'm like, "No, I'm a sub." And they go, one lady was straight up. She said, "I wouldn't know what to do with you." I looked at her, I'm like, but you're doing all these other things to all these other submissives. When I went to Black Beat, the first one, they put me up at an auction because I was the only Black male sub there. And my mistress said, "You're going on auction." And I said, "Ma'am?" And she said, "You're going up for auction." And Lash, Lady Coco, and Goddess pooled their money together to buy my ass and beat me afterwards.
Without the cultural stigma.
Yeah, without the cultural stigma, because whenever folks would find out that I was, it wasn't one of those subjects that comes up in normal conversation, but people who would come to my house would see, if they went back in the back bedroom, that wall of toys, of stuff that I had collected around the world, picked up this and that, just junk basically. But they would look back and like, "Yo, man, can I borrow some of that and take it home?" And we were like, "Well, can we talk about it?" And they would not talk about it. They wouldn't talk. I don't get. We were all friends who were there playing cards and drinking and all of that together. But when it came to kink, Black folks won't do it. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. And it took me forever to find folks that looked like me that would be kinky. I ended up going to Europe to see Black folk being kinky without shame. Coming back to the States, what's wrong with you? Why do you want to be kinky? Don't you know about slavery? And so forth and so on. Out of that notion, Black Beat was born, not to exclude anyone, but to include the folks who had been excluded.
That's the conversation I've had with you about what I had heard, that's what you got if you did that. Narrow House of Cruel Intention says, "It is because of Black Beat and giants like you, Mama Bai, that we as POC have events for us."
We weren't trying to be separate, but we needed that difference. You were talking earlier about MSC and seeing folks coming out in all of their leather finery. At Black Beat, it took on a whole nother level, because it was not only they were coming out in their leather finery, but the party that came with that, and the music that they, everybody else was just kind of very stately, very serene, very this, very that. At Black Beat, we were kicking it because the music was like, hey, instead of, and I like rock music, so don't get all bent out of shape, because I love classic rock. All right. But when you got a choice between AC/DC and Marvin Gaye, guess who loses?
What were we singing last night, Mama? You were flipping through pictures and we were doing Shut your mouth.
They say that Black child is a bad mother.
Shut your mouth.
Just talking to chat.
Pulse, could you speak to the music, to the differences, or you did a little bit there?
We have dominance that, there's dominance, and everybody has a different style of play. Okay. One particular dominant, one of the ones who bought me at the first auction, that's from Chicago, our little retired police officer, my protector. She dances when she beats you. When she's kicking your ass, she's dancing, because the music drives her play. And she's not alone. There are others who get to express that part of themselves. They're still doing the same thing. They're still kicking ass and taking names, but the whole vibe is different because they're moving and swaying and dancing to the music. When Z would play with me, you know, the music would be there, and you know, even the flogging was different because the beat of the flogger is coming down to the music, and it changes. No disrespect to anybody's music, because I love it. I love 90% of it. I won't say I love it all, but I love 90% of it. I was a DJ for 15 years. I played it all. But when you're in that environment, there's no contest. There's no contest.
Yeah, you can only play to Enigma or Mazzy Star so many times before you want to shove a pencil in your ear. Akasha, I'm gonna get to you 1 second. Ty says, I had never seen that many black folk in one kinky space before. It was beautiful. Yes. Akasha, go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess I wanted to chime in from the TNG perspective as well. I've been in the scene going on 12 years now, and when I first joined, I was in the Shibari scene, the like New York rope scene, and the gore at the same time. I began a training contract as a Kajira, and I still remember several incidents where other masters were asking to basically borrow me for the night, but which in and of itself, protocol wise, was fine, but they were making it like racial, and my masters had to shut it down. And that and other reasons were why I did end up leaving Gore after my like second training contract, and how I ended up with an ex-Gorian as my master for a while as well. And then even now I'm in an MS relationship with my spouse, but I've never been able to kind of get back to that because of how it kept getting racialized, even though it's not meant to be that way, as someone who's read many of the books. And that was, I guess, from that perspective. And then also, like, even in Shibari, right, there's a lot of like racial stuff that happens there too. I was ignored for the most part by cishet white male riggers. The first people to tie me and to build my portfolio as a bottom were queer female riggers of color and queer white female riggers. It wasn't until people started realizing, oh, this person has good lines, and I did dance and martial arts throughout college, that they were like, oh, can you tie with me? And I was like, hell no, I don't want to, because you were ignoring me before I had a portfolio to begin with. And so this stuff, I think, in terms of the cultural differences, really continues. And then on top of that, yeah, the music. I'm Afro-Caribbean, and like, if I'm gonna, suddenly hear Vibes Cartel come on while my top is, so I love Marvin Gaye, but if I'm gonna hear Vibes Cartel come on while I'm in the middle of getting flogged, and my top knows how to flog me to Vibes Cartel, or my top knows how to flog me to Lady Saw, and Leather Redux knows how to fire flog me to Lady Saw because she loves Lady Saw, then I'm going to get flogged to Lady Saw. That's going to be my choice. So definitely this is along cultural lines. And I'd say there are definitely a lot of differences, and the vibe in that is just so different, exactly like what Paul said. And so things can stay the same in many ways, even as they change and as they evolve.
Thank you, Kasha. D.S. Kushikin, when I went to LR, a white man randomly walked up to me and asked me if I was up for auction. I said no, but I put you up for auction. Good for you. I've told you before, in the 90s, I had people approach me and want to do the master slave and make it racial. And I was just like, God, I can't play that game. Nope, sorry.
I wrote my first editorial about that in 1994. I didn't realize that 25 years later it would still be read.
We just had this conversation the other night at the library, Mom, when we were talking about these things. And it amazes me that it's still a conversation, that those are things that are still fetishized. Like, what? and maybe I'm just too young to remember when that was like really a thing. And I know I am, because, you know, I'm just not 40. But I can't wrap my head around fetishizing somebody based on the color of their skin and making that exclusionary, because it is.
It's not to make this sound like I'm making light of something, but some people have a penchant for blondes, or they only want to deal with gingers. To some extent, it's no different. I can't tell you how many people I have who fetishize my hair because of how it feels and how very different it is from everyone else's. Fetishes in and of themselves are an unpredictable thing. The fetishization of skin for its skin color comes back to that exotic bird syndrome. I want it
That's
because
fair.
it is different.
That's fair. Still distasteful in my opinion, but
not going to argue that.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're a little past time. Does anybody else have anything before we stop the recording and start the after party, which is going to be a little interesting tonight? Scott, are you sticking around? Cool. I'm going to need your help.
I have a question that follows up on that.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to, because I'm one of those people that it's all yummy. I love a beautiful black man. I love a beautiful Asian man. I like the women. They're all yummy. So at what point does my admiration for the beauty of that individual become what they might see as a fetish? Because for me, it's a beautiful body.
What is it? Any beauty? I love beauty. I don't care if it's a purple octopus, if it's pretty. But I'm not only going after the purple octopus, which is the difference between I want it all, as you have said, Char, because you're greedy, versus I only want that because it's red.
But it becomes to the exclusion of everything else.
Everything else.
Yeah.
So does my admiration become fetishism if the other person feels fetishized because of their cultural history?
That is a very awkward situation.
Because one I found myself in recently, so I'm hoping to avoid it again.
You cannot always get into someone else's mind. I love pretty, and age gives me the privilege of being able to say to someone, "You are stunning. Forgive me for staring. You are stunning." Now, if someone then says, "Oh my God, you're a woman staring at me. Are you trying to make me a lesbian?" That's in their head, not in mine. So that is a very awkward situation because you cannot always tell what the other person is feeling. The only thing you can do if they believe you are fetishizing them is apologize and say, "I just think you're beautiful." Not "I think you're beautiful because," which is the fetishization. No, "I just think you're beautiful." Hell, one of my oldest and best friends, I walked up to and said, "Damn, you're gorgeous." And he looked at me and I went, "You're just pretty." That was Frank Nowicki. And he realized, because he had never really been complimented by a woman. And I said, the advantage that I have is it really is a compliment, not a come on.
Right. Right.
But he could have said anything from fag hag to "What's wrong with you? Are you trying to get me into my pants? Are you trying to convert me fill in 1,000 blanks I couldn't even think of. The bottom line is he's just a damn good looking man, and I like pretty. And my mother had always taught me, if there is a reason to pay a compliment, pay it. So I did. We're still good friends, and that was 30. Jesus. It was that long ago. It was that long ago.
5 years, everybody, 5 years.
I was reminded of, and I'm going to show my age a little bit here, of David Lee Roth's video for California Girls, where it opened up with the quote, and I can't remember who it's from, "Thank God for little girls."
Yes.
And somebody else added, "and all the other sizes too."
Thank heaven for little girls. Little girls get bigger every day. And thank heaven for little girls. They grow up in a most delightful. Now you need a favor from Scotty.
We need to wrap up. I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been a well-attended, great, I think one of our highest attended, and I'm loving it. Tell your friends, invite them for the next one. Second Wednesday of the month. We will be doing them at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so everybody from the East Coast to the West Coast can attend. We are going to stop the recording now and move on to the after party, which is going to have a special twist to it tonight. Everybody, you thanking us, thank you for attending, and we will continue to do them if you'll continue to come.